let's welcome in everybody else, all the storytellers out there, to meet the couple that did what we all wished we could do. This is Cassie and Oren Liebermann, and you guys basically lost your minds about a year ago.
In a good way. In a good way.
By some opinion. And tell me about it. You quit your job to travel the world. Where the hell did you come up with this?
Yeah, it's a kind of crazy idea, I think, especially for Americans to decide to quit your job, your career, and decide to backpack around the world. I've always loved traveling. I've had dreams of traveling since I was young, and that dream I kind of shared with Oren when we got married, and I said, is this something that you'd be interested in doing? You know, if we're going to do it, we have to go all out, you know, not just traveling for a couple weeks. We have to go, you know, for a couple months. And then he said, well, why not a full year? Let's just take off for a full year. So in the beginning, we really weren't sure if that was doable. Could we save enough money? How are we going to travel logistically? You know, where were we going to go?
And tell everybody, at this time, you guys were 29, I think, right? 29 and 30, or right in that range.
Yeah, when we started planning, I was probably 29. You were 27 or so. And then when we left, I was just about to turn 31, and you were 28. So we've both been in our careers a few years.
Oren, you were kind of in the heart of your career, at least the beginning. You had a great job in Philadelphia. Cassie, you had just left TV News, like you said, 2 years before that. And then in your new job, you got what?
Yeah, I switched to teaching, and I had gotten a promotion within my school that I was working at. So things were really going great in our careers. But we had this dream of traveling, and so we had to figure out what we were going to do, and we chose traveling.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is when you meet a lot of gap year students from Europe and Australia, and they'll take a year off before college. That's one way to do it. We decided, first we didn't do that, but we also decided to put in a few years in our career, because then we have a resume that's built up. Our resume looks pretty good. And then we saved up money. You know, we've had careers, we've had jobs. So when we felt like we wanted a nice night out, or we felt like we had to spend a little more money on a tour, it was great to have that. I mean, it was definitely a budget trip, and we spent many nights in bunk beds in hostel dorm rooms. But we knew that was part of it.
You tell kind of a different story of how this idea came about.
Oh,
tell me about
I tell the fun story.
The 4 drunken Australians.
3 to be exact. 3 Australians.
Okay.
But we were the first time I took her to Israel in 2011. We were at a hostel in Jerusalem, and we meet 3 Australians that were just absolutely drunk. And not only that, they'd been traveling the world and drinking in every country. And their word for that is they smashed a country. So we smashed Jordan, which means we drank like crazy in Jordan. So they were a lot of fun, but we thought they were total degenerates. You know, no future, nothing to look forward to when they got home. And then Cassie had an allergic reaction to something, probably the sun, and came down with hives. And we said, look, we can't go out with you guys tonight. And one of them pulls out a giant bag of prescription medicine. And we were like, what's going on here? Is this some drug ring we just discovered? And then she says, no, we're all doctors. And that's when it was like, wait a minute, what? And we realized pretty quickly right there that, wait a minute, if they can do it, we can do it. If people can take a break from their careers and travel, why not? I mean, what's stopping you? And obviously there are a lot of professional pressures, especially in news. You know, you get the first job so you can get the second job, so you can get the third job and just keep working your way up. I stepped away from that. She stepped away from a phenomenal promotion in teaching. And it was a little bit of faith, a little bit of craziness, a little bit of, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Wait, you guys had to explain this to your family. And, you know, obviously you're adults, but at the same time, they had to think you're nuts.
Sure. I mean, they're not the first people to think we're nuts. I think her parents, Cassie's parents, took it better than my parents. And it made sense from Cassie's career to an extent, because you can't, as a teacher, you can't just hop into the school year halfway through. So if you're going to take a big vacation, you might as well just take the whole year. For me, it was like, well, whatever. It's not a great idea, but we'll deal with it. My parents wanted us to travel for shorter. They wanted us to do a 3-month or a 6-month trip, but that didn't make sense for Cassie's career. So we figured, what the heck, let's pull a full year. And we just got back, and I think we clocked in at 47 weeks, so just short of a full year.
Yeah.
And whatever. Some people ask, some people in my family were asking us from the first day, like, what job do you have lined up when you get back? We don't have a job lined up when we get back. We'll figure it out when we get back.
Part of this is, you know the risks going into it, but you also have to trust yourself as a person and trust, the experience that you've had. And so, we've always been people who, I mean, us, we kind of hit the ground running when we do things. So, we hit the ground running in terms of traveling. We're going to hit the ground running in terms of finding a job when we get back. So it was, it was now or never kind of, that was where we were at with traveling. So.
So name some of the places that you guys saw during your travels.
So the final country count is 30 countries on 5 continents. We did not hit Antarctica or Australia. Some of the highlights: Machu Picchu, the Great Wall, Angkor Wat in Cambodia.
Hiking the Himalayas.
Hiking in the Himalayas was incredible. Just seeing the Himalayas, seeing a mountain right next to you that's 26,000 feet high.
During your travels, Oren, you discovered a bit of a issue. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, and I'll keep it short because I've told this story 1,000 times. 5 months into our trip, roughly 5 to 6 months into our trip, we were in Nepal, and I was feeling I'd lost a tremendous amount of weight, something like 40 pounds. I was incredibly thirsty. It finally got so bad that I went to the doctor and found out I was a type 1 diabetic at 31 years old. A week in a Nepali hospital, which I wouldn't wish upon anybody. And then we were finally cleared to fly home. Spent a month at home and got back on the road. I mean, the first week after I got diagnosed was horrible. Hardest week of my life in a hospital halfway around the world that somehow has no heating, so in a sleeping bag. In a hospital, no Wi-Fi, no electricicity for half the day.
You were in the good part of the hospital, right? The foreigner.
Yeah. So we were. I mean, my room cost us $10 a night. We ended up staying in a hospital for 4 days, and every test they could run, and I think our final bill was $198.
Jeez, oh man.
But that's indicative of the quality of medical care. Was able to get to a different hospital, spent 2 more nights there, and finally made it home.
Now, this happened on Valentine's Day, correct? And Cassie,
yes.
What
Yeah,
did he?
Fantastic Valentine's Day gift.
I'm buying myself flowers from now on. The official diagnosis came on Valentine's Day, and then I spent that next week in the hospital.
I know that I saw pictures of you online, Oren, and you were. I was like, holy cow. You are looking too hot.
Really scary. It was really scary towards the end. It was.
Yeah, it's the last couple of weeks, especially when, and I didn't notice it in myself for a long time, but then I was just in the bathroom standing next to the mirror, and I turned sideways for a second and looked back in the mirror and was like, oh my God, I'm, I'm taller than Cass and just a guy, so I inevitably weighed more, but I was thinner than her, I was disgustingly thin. And then I stepped on the scale and we realized, it's in kilograms because we're not in America. And I'm doing the math in my head like, I've just dropped 40 pounds. And, it sucked. There's no way of changing that. You get a lifelong disease halfway around what's supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. But we didn't let it bother us. We had to come home for medical reasons. But we got back on the road, went straight back to Thailand and started exploring Southeast Asia. And, if our parents thought we were crazy for traveling for a year, they definitely thought we were crazy for getting back on the road.
But it became inspirational too, because then we started talking to other people who were interested in traveling that were diabetic or type 1 diabetic, and they would be contacting him, asking him questions and stuff, and to realize that, nothing in life can hold you back from what you really want to accomplish and the dreams that you have. And so he kind of single-handedly proved that to himself, I think, as he traveled.
So when we hiked in the Himalayas, I was diabetic and didn't know it, and the final push to the top almost killed me.
Oren, you're looking for a job.
Yes.
Slightly unemployed, but no regrets, right?
None whatsoever. No regrets about my diagnosis, no regrets about having to find a job now. My resume tape is totally out of date, but we made it a point to shoot videos on the road. We shot, wrote, and edited small travel videos that look, for all intents and purposes, like a news video. They're 90-second packages about what it's like to hike the Great Wall.
I actually did get to watch them. They are very good. You said I think they stink, but actually they're really good. So you guys did a job. Did Cassie shoot or did you shoot?
I did most of the shooting, but you definitely shot some.
Yeah.
So
that was
paying
really
attention all those days that we worked together.
Yeah, all those days I was asleep in the live truck.
Yeah.
For any prospective employers, that was a joke. But it's all the things we learned together when Storytellers started, and when we were putting together, when we were experimenting with how to put together packages and new ideas, we were able to play with all of that, and it's fun to play with it in a non-news scenario. So if I wanted to add music, I just added music. I didn't have to think about its effect on the journalistic integrity of the piece.
And Cassie, I have to ask you, obviously no regrets either, right? I mean, it was worth the year off, the money, you're working now, so you really worked out well for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky the way that it ended up with the trip. But I knew that. As I mentioned before, it's such a big leap of faith, such a big question of taking that year off. I have no regrets. I think we were so lucky that we were able to have this experience together, as a married couple as well. A lot of people travel solo. We got to have that together. We have the same passions in terms of journalism and termography and in writing. And so I am so happy that was something we were able to do.
So any thoughts for people out there that are getting this crazed idea that you guys had? We all work so hard in news, and I thought that your story was so compelling just because you guys did what we all wished we could, just kind of take a moment and take some time for yourself. And just, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with people out there about, trying maybe not to work so hard all the time?
It's easy for us, especially in hindsight, to say just do it. It required a tremendous amount of planning. I mean, the hardest part at first is financial. You have to save money. We were lucky that we got married a year before we started our trip, so we just took all the money we were able to got from the wedding basically and put it straight towards the trip. But then we cut out on going out to eat, cut out on drinks, cut out on fancy food. We cut out trips.
We changed our lifestyle, basically,
to save money for the trip. We didn't buy new clothing. Even on the road, I had 3 T-shirts. You can look at 10,000 pictures of us. I'm wearing the same 3 shirts.
Yeah, each of us only had 1 backpack, so we were very limited into what we could take. But yeah, I mean, in terms of people wanting to do this or plan in news, you have very little vacation. I know that. We know that. But if you do have some and you have a little chunk of time, even getting away for a 4-day weekend, going to another country, a country that's close, start there. I mean, you don't have to do what we did and take a full year off, but you're not going to regret it. So just taking those small little trips, telling yourself that it's okay, maybe even a break between your 2 jobs.
That's the perfect time to do it in news, where you can line up a next job and give yourself 6 weeks off, 4 weeks off. Pick a region and explore it.
Well, again, as I said, the $1 million question is, what did you learn about yourself during your year of traveling the world?
I learned I'm diabetic. Well, yes.
Valuable thing to know.
I think, initially just about each other, we had been married for a year. We had been together for a number of years. But you learn a lot more as a couple. I guess let's start there, because we were with each other literally every minute of every day. Some couples could not do that. We had to learn, how to get along in terms of, and what we liked and what our interests were and how to travel well together. And so I think it brought us much closer. And we learned a lot more about each other within that year.
I mean, you definitely learn, you see the rest of the world, and the rest of the world isn't nearly as affluent as us. You don't need money to be happy. You learn that in places like Vietnam and Laos and and Cambodia, where they live on $2 or $3 a day. I mean, you pay a tuk-tuk driver $30 a day, and you've just made his week. That's very eye-opening. And we had a stopover in San Francisco between Japan and Peru. We went out to a quick lunch, and you know, a burger, a chicken sandwich, beer, and wine was $54, and it was like $54. Are you crazy? Do you know what I can do with this in Cambodia?
That's
It makes you travel makes you a richer person, and not richer in terms of money. You know,
definitely not in terms of money.
we're actually very poor. No, but really, you know, your whole perspective of what's important in life, really takes shape as you meet these people, you know, throughout your journey. And for me, it's really, the places are very interesting, but for me, it's the people. The people have made the difference.
I will say, since this is Storytellers, from a journalistic perspective, you learn how good we have it here in the States. Go try to file a news story in China or Vietnam or Laos. See what happens. Tell a police officer you're a journalist and see how fast you get tossed in jail.
Yeah.
And I mean, even more, you learn, you get a perspective on what's important, and not just from a personal perspective, but from a world perspective. You know, local news is notorious for covering crime. First, you don't hear as much about that in the rest of the world, but much more about economics and world leaders. And it's very interesting to see that, even if we don't actually understand what the news is saying, you can pick it up.
There are plenty of stories to tell everywhere in the world. So if that inspires anybody to decide to travel and tell those stories, that's fantastic, because there are plenty of untold stories that are out there.
So, Oren, you're looking for work now. So anybody out there?
I promise I will shave and I wear contacts when I'm on air. And a suit.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, of course. Thanks, Matt.